Hey guys, it's Christian from Lost in Discovery and welcome back to my One Piece journey. Today we are going to be talking about the post-war arc, chapters 581 to 597. I absolutely devoured this arc right after I finished Marineford. I just haven't had the time to sit down and film my thoughts in this video. So it's been about a week or two, well, closer to 2 weeks actually, since I've read this arc. So I might be a bit hazy on a few of the details. But the good news is I'm going to upload this in my evening tonight, and when I get up in the morning I'm going to go live to talk to you guys about the Summit War saga in proper detail. Anything I've missed that you'd like to ask me about, any questions left unanswered by me, or things you think I needed to look out for, and just me generally talking about the amazing events of these arcs. Join me there live, it'll be nice. We haven't had a live stream in a long time and I'm eagerly looking forward to talking to you about the incredible series that is One Piece. It feels amazing because I've also started, just very briefly, the next arc. It feels like an absolute milestone that we're reaching the end of the first kind of portion of One Piece before going into a time skip, seeing the Straw Hats in a completely different light 2 years later. It's a special moment for me to get to this point in One Piece, and I can't wait to reflect and think back on the good old days once I'm all the way caught up. So, the post-war arc begins with the death of Whitebeard and Ace, sort of wrapping up the events of Marineford, and we have lost two major players in the world of One Piece. The world government seems to be right on top. The Navy is so proud of what they have achieved. It is a kind of a bleak beginning, and it reminds me a lot of post Enies Lobby, where we're wrapping up such a massive story that's being told and getting the epilogue section and seeing how it's affecting the huge ripple of Marineford and the death of Ace and Whitebeard, and how it's spread out and affected all characters, main, tertiary, and just background people in the entire world. We really see how these massive events have affected everyone. There were a lot of key moments in this initial chapter of 581. There's apparently a brown beard now who's like, you know what, we had Whitebeard, we had Blackbeard, I think it's my time as Brownbeard to take some names. Interesting moment there, but one of the cooler moments was with Blackbeard, how he's gone to Impel Down. He's like, I've got the worst of the worst from level 6. You guys are going to fight to the death, and the ones remaining will stay in my crew. And it's just really setting up Blackbeard as this ultimate formidable foe, the ultimate villain of this series. There are so many antagonists in this series, but Blackbeard is really being built up as the big bad so far. I like that we're getting very morally grey characters on the side of the Navy. It's easy to see a lot of these guys as ultimate baddies at the beginning, but you know, we've gotten a lot of ambiguity with Aokiji. We've been seeing a bit of a side to Sengoku and Garp, you know, this massive apprehension they have in the events that are taking place here. And the fact that the world government wants to cover up the events that have happened at Impel Down really rubs Sengoku the wrong way. And it looks like him and Garp are kind of slowly removing themselves from the structure of the Navy as we know it. And I'm very curious to see how these guys, especially Aokiji as well, who don't seem completely on board on what they're doing, I'm curious to see where Oda takes those characters in the time skip. Another interesting thing was Doflamingo pretty much taking out Moria because he doesn't think he's worthy of the title of being a warlord. You know what, I'm kind of with Doflamingo. Was Moria that like, I can barely, like, the shadows, yeah, I mean, I just feel like when I think of all the other warlords, Moria is the one I'm like least impressed with, or least interested in. And I think Doflamingo is going to be a very interesting character as we go forward, because he seems like the ultimate wildcard who's willing to do absolutely anything just to kind of rock the boat and see how high he can climb. He's kind of just like an agent of chaos in this story. And once we cut back to Luffy and see his reaction to everything that's been happening, it is absolutely heartbreaking. And Luffy and his backstory and him all throughout this arc was just heartbreaking panel after heartbreaking panel. It was really tough to read. When he gets up and realizes Ace is dead, isn't he? And he just wails. It is so freaking sad, because throughout this series, Luffy has gotten his butt kicked a lot. He has been defeated so many times, but he's been able to get back. He's been able to fix the situation. He's been able to come back from that and rectify all the wrongs that have occurred. And the closest thing I feel like we've got to this is in a few arcs back when Kuma disappeared all of his crew and Luffy loses it, because at that point he's under the impression the crew are completely dead, wiped out, disappeared for good. He couldn't even save one of them. But soon after, once he is transported to Amazon Lily, he kind of comes to the conclusion that they were all sent off to various places, and there is a hope, there is a chance that they can get back together and fix things, which becomes a massive plot point in the post-war arc here too. But with the death of Ace, obviously there's no reincarnating, well, the Will of D suggests something else potentially. This is something that Luffy, this is the lowest low in his life. This is the worst he's ever been. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to him. There's no going back from it. And in some ways, he wasn't enough at this point to be able to save his brother, and it's so difficult to acknowledge that for Luffy, and so difficult to read it as the reader. And finally, I get clarification with Dadan that she was his foster mother, and all of this. I've been asking about Dadan forever in these videos. And let's go right into it. The backstory of Luffy, Ace, and Sabo, the Mr. Wildcard, the third brother. This flashback, this backstory of Luffy, I've been waiting for forever, because this guy refuses to talk about his childhood. I swear, you're on a ship with all your friends, your best friends in the world, the Straw Hat Gang. I just want to, like, why aren't we sitting at the feast saying, oh, you know, I grew up here, this is where I come from? I suppose Luffy wouldn't find it that important, but I wish there was some more small talk between these guys so we wouldn't have to wait till these flashbacks to understand where they have come from. I kind of thought about if it would have been more effective to know all of this before Ace's death, because when you really think about it, I don't really know Ace at this point. None of us really did. He was just the cool older brother, mysterious. We kind of learnt about Ace in Marineford through his relationships with Whitebeard and Whitebeard pirates, and how he had affected those people in his life. But we never really understood the way he grew up with Luffy, his proper relationship with Luffy, besides just being like the cool older brother that's like, he'll be alright, we'll catch up later. So it was really touching to be able to understand their relationship through this flashback now, and it retroactively makes his death 10 times more devastating, because you see how much of a pivotal person, like, he was just Luffy's rock for so long. It was really touching to see Luffy, after getting dropped off by Garp at the freaking, you know, Will of D daycare, or whatever you want to call it, with Dadan. It was really touching to see Luffy just try over and over and over again to befriend Ace and eventually Sabo. And when Ace snaps and is like, why are you so freaking persistent with me? Just leave me alone. And Luffy's like, I've just got no one else. I just felt for Luffy so damn much, because if you think of his child, imagine being that young and just dropped off at a random person's house. Yeah, that's your mum now. I can't be bothered. By your own grandfather, like, that's rough. And Ace is just so resistant, because as we've seen before, you know, he's been, like, the government is hunting him down to kill him. He's been raised and lived in a world where he's considered a mistake, a detriment, like something that needs to be get rid of, a huge burden. And to see Ace's reaction that Luffy just wants to be loved by him and wants to befriend him, it kind of softens him up a bit, and it was great to see this slow softening up of Ace and acceptance of Luffy throughout this flashback. It recontextualizes Luffy quite a lot, because, you know, he's been Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, cool cucumber, just like, yeah, you're my friend now, come on, let's go. It's interesting to see him in a light where he was completely alone and desperate for any sort of friendship or connection. It's hard to imagine him like that since he's had the Straw Hats for like 600 million chapters that I've read so far. And it was great to see Luffy stand up for the boys. He got hit in the face with a freaking mace over and over again, and he didn't break. He protected Sabo and Ace. And Sabo kind of joins the fold as the third brother, taken in by Dadan, and he's just giving her lips straight away. And I fell in love with the idea of these three growing up together and becoming brothers and family, you know, before Oda chose to rip my heart out once again. But we'll talk about Sabo in a little bit. What was very cool to see was Luffy's gum power, because we've seen it just be incredible the entire series, and how he's been able to level it up, so to speak, with Gear 2nd and 3rd, and how creative he can get with it. It was cool to see the origins of it, how he was trying to do Gum Gum Pistol as a child, and it was just useless. He was flailing everywhere, it was so bad, and Ace was like, dude, the Gum Gum fruit, you kind of picked the wrong fruit, mate. There's not much you can do there. There's an interesting line from Dragon here. I don't know if I misinterpreted it. He said, I've made him hate his own people, in regards to Sabo and him hating the aristocrat family he's originally from. Now, I don't know if I read this too fast or I wasn't understanding, but I kind of got the impression that Sabo is actually another son from Dragon. Like, it's unclear exactly how the heck Sabo has just showed up here. I don't know, I am kind of just outing myself as being completely unsure here, but it seems like there's some close relationship between Dragon and Sabo that we are not fully explained to at that point. We get a very cool panel of, in this whole Rubbish Island portion where Ace actually uses that Haki that can knock out a bunch of people too. Just raises more questions of how Luffy and Ace and Shanks all were able to use this Haki that knocks people out. I'm forgetting which one it is, the Supreme King or something. Just another interesting point that I'm just taking note of, and I'll bring with me further into the series and try and pick up any more hints with that. So as Sabo is, he's separated from the boys, he's trying to escape. His ship is shot down by the Celestial Dragons because, classic Celestial Dragons, they see anything in their way, they'll just destroy it. From all the accounts we can see here, Sabo has died. But, and I know Oda has just started killing characters, Ace, Whitebeard. Prior to that, the only permanent deaths we had really seen were in Flashback. So I was keeping that in my mind when I read this. But I didn't see a body. That's all I'm gonna say. In most media, if you don't see the body, it's not completely confirmed. It would just soften the blow of the death of Ace to some degree. Nothing will ever take away from that tragedy, but it would be amazing to see him and Luffy reconnect again. And yeah. Maybe I'm just trying to cope after these terrible events. I'm like, bring back Sabo, come on. I love this connection with Roger, how Ace wouldn't back down and protected Luffy in this moment. As much as Ace would snap at Luffy for crying all the time and being such an emotional wreck, he's younger, he's a kid, it's fine. But he just wasn't having it. But to see Ace have this private moment of crying, just breaking down after reading Sabo's letter and realizing he's been killed, was brutal to read. It really humanized Ace, and I believe Luffy saw this moment too, and I feel like it showed, to Luffy that his older brother, who seemed invincible and hard as stone, he's only human too, and Luffy feels this intense need to protect him. He's worrying that Ace is gonna die too, and Ace promising that he'll never die. Oh god, it's just brutal. It's just brutal and makes, like I've said, everything about this has made Ace's death 10 times more painful. And it was great to see Dadan reacting so tearfully once the boys set off to their ultimate pirate journey, how Ace left at 17. It was very cool to see. It was just great to see Ace leave and start his journey, and soon after, it recontextualizing the day Luffy leaves completely, him looking up to the sky and being like, look Sabo, we did it, we're gonna be great pirates for you. It was so freaking beautiful. He kind of promises to Sabo as he's setting out, like, I'm gonna be so strong, I'm gonna get so strong, I'm not gonna lose anyone again. And it brutally cuts back to the present day with Luffy covered in bandages and just being like, I'm so weak, coming to the realization that he indeed could not save Ace, and he's lost his second and only remaining brother. Masterful paneling and storytelling, brutal to read. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. And then we cut back to Windmill Village and Garp arriving, Dadan's visceral reaction, punching down Garp. He couldn't protect Ace. Makino has just been like, Garp's hurting the most, can't you see, Dadan? And she's like, no, Luffy's hurting the most. And I lost it, because it's so true. Like, she's their mother, man, and this guy who just dropped him off, he suddenly reappears again after the death, and I totally get Dadan's reaction, and it was so bloody sad to read, and it was just miserable. The whole thing was miserable, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I loved the paneling for the funeral of Whitebeard and Ace, and Marco's gratitude to Shanks for doing all this. It really felt like a solemn ending to this entire portion of the story, and really signifying that this is like the point of no return. This is when everything changes in the series, and it sets, like, not that Marineford didn't, but it really solidifies these events as completely world changing, and just it really showed the gravity of what was going on in the series. I loved everything about Shanks in this portion, how he was saying, you know, thinking, I don't know if he says it out loud, but to Luffy, saying it's okay to cry, you know, it's alright to let it out, but let's get up, let's keep going. Cutting back to Jinbei, it was very much the same message. Jinbei was exactly the guy you need with you when you've suffered a massive loss. You know, you could have just made Ace's death a huge impact, and Oda could have just made, you know, I haven't killed anyone yet, let's, you know, take away Ace and make it a big shocking moment, and not, you know, he could have not explored it, and I'm sure people would still talk about it. But I love how seriously he took it, and I love how much we explored it with Luffy, and how much damage it has caused him, and I'm sure will permanently damage him forever, like, of course. And what Jinbei says, he says, what's gone is gone forever. Try and remember what you still have. Well, oh my god, this whole moment of Luffy, you know, screaming, I still have my crew, listing them off and wanting to see them, was such a tear-jerking moment, especially in the anime too. Wow. One of my favorite panels in One Piece, and, you know, it's a lesson for us all to learn. We'll all have this in our life. You know, no one lives forever, and it may crush you and destroy you, but you eventually have to take that loss, build yourself up again, and focus on what is left, exactly like Jinbei said, and live for those people and live for those experiences. It's just the sad reality of life, and One Piece went there and delved into it. It taps into so many different facets of life, and I'm so glad. I'm just so happy with how he's tackled it with Ace and Luffy here. Just as you're getting emotional and existential and wondering about loss and death, Rayleigh's like, hey, I swam through the calm belt because I'm a crazy old man and I don't have a devil fruit, but I can somehow do that anyway. Rayleigh's just the coolest freaking old guy in recent memory. I don't understand how he had done that. The power level of Goldie Roger's crew is just beyond my comprehension at this point. We finally get to see all of the Straw Hats again, and their reaction to what has happened with Ace here. And again, heartbreaking scene after heartbreaking scene, but also very, very cool to finally see where the Straw Hats have been and what they've been up to. Immediately we see Nami crying, we see Zoro and freaking Mihawk. Oh my god, I don't know where to begin there. Frankie's blowing up Vegapunk's entire operation. I don't know, Vegapunk's, I feel like Vegapunk's gonna be massive too. How the heck does he have all this technology? Like 100 years future. I feel like it could be to do with the missing portion of history there. I don't know, but the fact that Frankie's just like, ooh, the pirate symbol, pff, exploding everything. Yeah, classic. I miss Frankie, far out. Brook getting completely screwed over with his whole demon persona that he'd done. It was really, really fun to see everyone, and Fat Usopp. I don't think anyone's prepared for Fat Usopp, let's be real. Another highlight for me here was Sanji with Ivankov trying to deny the wanted poster as much as he could until he realized, like, you know, look, I've really got to help Luffy. Just him, the character development of him having to accept, like, this is a picture of me. I love that that's his big moment he has to overcome. I have to accept that, yes, that drawing is referring to me in order to help my main man Luffy. I loved that. It honestly blew my mind to see Duval still defending the Sunny, just fighting off people left, right, and center to make sure he kept that promise. He really appreciated the facial surgery that Sanji gave him. I love it. Now, a few things here before we pop over to the whole 3D2Y revelation. A few things I wrote down that I thought were of note. We finally get to see the Five Elders again. I don't know what to make of these guys, but it was interesting to see how concerned they were that everyone's learning about this whole Will of D business. Again, I don't think I have the energy or knowledge really to be still theorizing about the Will of D. Let's talk about that on the live stream. Saving that for a live stream discussion. We get confirmation of Kobe Haki. Very interesting there. We also get kind of the impression that Sengoku and Garp, oh my god, Garp are essentially retiring or removing themselves from the Navy to some degree. Man, I was kind of like I was kind of like Zoro for the longest time, desperately trying to understand what Luffy did here. His big moment in front of the press and Marineford ringing the bell 16 times. Like I was analyzing this for so long. I'm like, what did he actually achieve here? And then noticing and understanding the 3D to Y tattoo. Don't meet up in 3 days. Crossed out, meet up in 2 years. I freaking love this. So brilliant. I love that they're taking the time to build these guys up, because we're clearly not ready for what's in the new world. Unfortunately, as amazing as the Straw Hats are, they're clearly not ready. And I love that Luffy was able to come to this conclusion, to have the patience, to have the foresight, obviously guidance from Rayleigh and Jinbei, I don't know, but to have the guidance from, you know, more experienced people to really accept that shows a lot of growth from Luffy, a lot of maturity, and it's just kind of amazing. I mean, it's kind of a flex to go there and do that in front of the entire world and get that published in the paper. Amazing. And I love how Oda kept it a mystery for so long and made you really keep reading those chapters until you found out. I really enjoyed seeing all of the Straw Hats react to this and understanding it in the paper, and they all kind of flash back to when they initially joined the crew. Nami has this thing when we got the flashback to freaking Arlong Park, where the famous "Help Me Luffy" scene. She just thought to herself, it's now my turn. It's my turn to help you, Luffy. And just hit just right. Robin thought back to Enies Lobby. It was all beautiful. It was very interesting that Usopp, he didn't think about when he first joined the crew. Everyone else did, but he thought about Alabasta for some reason. That's something of note that I need to look back on. Everyone else was like, when I joined. Usopp, Alabasta, for whatever reason. I adored the scene between Zoro and Mihawk and him being like, you gotta train me, man. You've got to freaking train me. Putting all of his pride aside, putting it all aside. And he's just like, I need you to train me so I can surpass you. Like, amazing scene from Zoro. He's the best first mate you could ever have in your crew. And I shudder to think of how incredible he's going to get under the tutelage of Mihawk. Oh man, it's gonna be amazing. And probably the last thing of note, before the time skip, we do see all of these types of Haki, and it was really nice to get this finally explained, and it's gonna be fun to go back and see uses of it back in the day when Luffy didn't realize, you know, what he was doing. I think Rayleigh is gonna create an absolute monster out of Luffy, and I cannot wait to see just how insanely powerful all the Straw Hats are going to get. I feel like Haki's going to become a much bigger thing in the story. I feel like it's not going to be reserved for Luffy. I've had, you know, moments where I thought that Zoro has been using it. I think potentially Sanji at some point, I thought he was doing some sort of mind stuff. So I'm curious to see if other crew members are able to use this or have used this in the past. Oh, it's going to be really exciting. Those are my scatterbrain thoughts on the post-war arc. I know I couldn't talk about everything. Luckily, we have the live stream tomorrow, and man, it's amazing to finally get to this point in One Piece, and I can't wait to see what the new world has to offer. I'm also going to be publishing soon a video with some special guests talking about all the journeys we've had in One Piece so far. I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm excited to get that out as well. But yeah, thank you for all of your support and encouraging comments and helping me see things that I've missed in One Piece. I hope to see you at the live stream. I hope you've been well, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.